It's you and I who make up this world. What's going on right now in Serbia, and Yugoslavia, and Croatia, or the Middle East with terrorism, or what happened in Cambodia and Vietnam and any place. It's people. God doesn't sit up there like a monster and decides, well, today we kill 2,000 people, tomorrow 3,000 people. I don't believe that. I think it's people who decide to attack, to have a war, or to distinguish between Serb and Croatian, or Jew and Christian and Muslims and so on and so forth. This is my philosophy in life. If we can make a better world, we have, this is our an Aufgabe, this is our task in life. We must be here for a reason.
The first thing they did, they told us that all the Jewish people, they have to have armband with a big Mugendovet on it, so they could tell who is Jewish. We were not allowed to deal with our neighbors, even talking to our neighbors. Then they took away all our cattle. They took away all our ways of living.
We encountered it all the time, because at one time, for instance, I was standing in front of where we lived, and a guy came up and slapped me, my father.
Growing up in Poland was not very pleasant. My first day at school, the kids gathered together, the non-Jewish kids, and were waiting for me, and was beaten up. And they took my school bag and threw it in the waters.
She said to me like this, you know, you're a Jew, and I don't want you to play with my brother, and I don't want you to come anymore to our house.
But in the beginning, of course, first started with curfews for Jews. You had to register, and we would get passport stamped with a J, Jude, and armbands, and if you didn't wear the armband, it was penalty of death.
My uncle said, we are not moving. None of us is going anywhere. We're not going to leave. Here we're staying right here. The Germans can be all that bad. You remember them from before the First World War, and of course then it was a different story. So we stayed. And nobody survived. I was the only one survivor that was left from the whole family.
I came to next door and I said, Pani Janicka, I don't have a mother, I have nobody. She turns around. Our curtains were hanging there already in her house. She says, get out from here, you dirty Jew. Now it's my time. Your time is over.
And I can remember today, the blood was spattered on the wall. The man was shot just for having parts of radio.
So they hung me up. They tied my hands behind my back, and they hung me by the ceiling, just enough so I could touch just my toe to the floor. That was it. One guy would stand on one side, hit me here, I fly the other way. The other guy hit me there, I fly back. And meanwhile, I had that real bad sore. I said, don't do that, I got sore here. He says, well, that's what we want you. We want you to be sore.
They made her dance and they made her sing. And she was singing Heil Hitler, Live Hitler, you know what I mean? They made her. And they grabbed that child from her, and down there was a fence, and they took that child and they smashed it against the fence.
It's hard to understand where we lived without a law. The only law that existed was the law designed against us, against the Jews, you know.
We got a room with my family, 4 of us, my grandmother, and a cousin of my mother, a young woman whose husband was in the work camp. And we have been 6 people in the room, a very tiny room, no kitchen, and we slept on the floor on mattresses, and we couldn't take with us nothing, really just 50 kilograms, and we mostly took something to be able to feed yourself.
They allowed us for a few hours to get out of the ghetto, to go to market 2 hours a day. But with what are you going to buy the stuff? There's nothing. Remember, I cut off buttons, and I traded, I think, for my coat 4 buttons, 5, for some food.
My father used to go in the morning to prayer in a house. He came back and he said, I have bad news, and I have to tell you. It's written all over the walls that tomorrow morning, by 6 o'clock, we should be ready to emigrate to another place, to a bigger place where it's going to be work for men, and women are going to have jobs, and the children are going to take care of. We have to be ready for tomorrow morning. Just my father, when you looked at him, he tried to make a story, to be a father figure, a hero. Just, he was gray on his face. His eyes were bulging out. I could see, even from his mouth, coming out foam. I don't know if that's scare, I don't know what it was. It's just that feeling. Everybody got that feeling from him. Then my sister stepped in and said, it's exactly like we were told. We will be taken tomorrow morning, and we're going to be shot. And you, my sister, my baby sister, that's how she said to me in Polish. And you're going to run. And one day, you're going to live and tell the story.
People really ask why we didn't resist. How we can resist when they had the weapons on us? We couldn't resist, and we had lots of old people and lots of young people and women and children, because the young male people was taken in the work force. So we didn't have nobody to protect us.
A German came over to me and he said, how old are you? And I was going to say 14. And my mother pushed me. She's 16, just like that. And she pushed me. And as she pushed me, I pushed myself back, and I was hanging on to my mother. Apparently, he wanted to spite me. So he grabbed me so hard by the hand, he just gave me like a throw. Come. And he took me. That was the last I saw my mother.
The transport was about 3 days. But when we came to Auschwitz, actually it was Birkenau. We didn't know the difference, nobody told us. We stayed over there 2 more days on the cars because there were so many transport coming in and they couldn't handle everybody. So we stayed about 2 more days in the cars till they unloaded us. We had Polish people walking by, the worker. We asked them for water. They say, you see that smoke up there? You don't need no water where you're going.
We had to undress completely, and we went through a selection. The old people, like old, they sent to one side, the young ones they sent to this side. And we didn't know at that time that this meant crematorium and that meant life. They sent us in to take a shower. But at that time, we had heard already about gassing people. So we are always saying goodbye to each other.
There was one guy with us in the car that he didn't want to survive. He tried to commit suicide in the car. He had a razor blade and he cut his wrist. They say when you cut your wrist, you cut your main vein, you bleed to death. Matter of fact, some people were so thirsty in the in the boxcar, they bent down and sucked his blood. But he didn't die. But as soon as they opened up the doors, the boxcars, he jumped out and he knew it, and he ran across the field and they shot him. They opened up a machine gun, so he just dropped.
Schnell, schnell raus, you Saujuden, schnell, you verstinkene Saujuden, out from the wagon. And they used the whip, and my father told me, I remember the last verse, he told we should pray, and we prayed, we had the Shema Yisrael in between us, and my father told me, don't let your mother hands go, because we have to go separate ways, and I go with your brother. And I want to tell you, you have been always my very good daughter.
Well, I guess we felt very fortunate that we were alive. However, we constantly lived with the, we thought, well, maybe tomorrow is going to be our turn. We saw transports coming and disappearing. I remember they brought in a transport from Hungary. And those people came straight from their homes. They were dressed up in furs, and they were having lunch on napkins with white gloves. And the next morning they disappeared, and we knew that they were all taken to the crematoriums. So you kind of live from hour to hour, and you wondered whether the next day is going to be your turn.
I was marching to the right. Women and kids went to the left. We never seen them. That was the end of it. They marched us for a while, and they marched us into a big barrack. The barrack must have been 200 feet wide and about 500 feet long. And we all had to go over to one side. They told us to take off all our clothes. All we could hold on is our shoes and the belt. The rest of them, just leave it where you are. When everybody was undressed, they marched us back to the other side at the barrack. And that's when they shaved us. Well, not shaved, they cut all our hair upstairs and downstairs. In the middle on the head, they had about inch and a half wide strip. We call it in the camp Lauserstrasse, Lie Street. That's because the lice were so fat, that's the only way they could walk is in where there was no hair. After they finished with us, with the hair, they marched us out the door, and by the door was a big bucket. It's a trough. It's a solution. And we supposed to dip our shoes in there, in the belt, to sanitize it, and go out. When we went out, was table set up on each side. One person would give us a pair of pants, the other person would give us a jacket, the other one would give us a cap. We had the caps too, round caps wearing, striped ones. And they gave us a shirt too, in underwear, long underwear in the shirt. And after we got out from there, they marched, when we were all ready, they marched us in to a big barrack. We were marching down the street, it was already dark, and we could see flames from ahead of us. We could hear music real loud and screaming. Kids and women, they were screaming, maybe men too. Apparently the crematorium was too full and they were burning them right on the open fire.
There's no tears. You just go to, there's only a will to survive somehow. I don't know. You have no feelings anymore.
On each floor were 12 girls. 12, that means 36 girls in these three koya was like a wooden bed. And it was nothing, we didn't have no straw, we had only one cover for the 12 of us. And we had been crying and we didn't recognize each other. We touched each other's head and it was so smooth with being shaved, and we have been crying to be so humiliated by making from us so sexless person. We have been no woman and no man, and we don't even recognize our closest friends.
The first job I heard, they're looking for people to carry the dead bodies, to ask first for volunteers. Before she even asked, I picked up my hand because I heard we're going to get a double ration of bread. So I was carrying dead bodies. 4 girls, we see somebody lying, we get them together, 2 by the legs, 2 by the hands, and we throw them like a piece of garbage because that's what we were.
It's hard to even to describe. There's no vocabulary that could really describe the hardship that a person had to go through and the existence and survive and go on with life.
But my mother used to take her piece of bread and break it in two and give it to my sister and myself and say a mother can see her children being hungry. We selfishly took it.
And I couldn't eat, and my friend told me, close your nose and close your eyes and open your mouth. You have to eat because we have to survive. We have to survive. And I realized if we want to survive, and I want to survive, I decided that I will survive for all my strength. I will put together everything. And I never had willpower before, but this gave me a willpower. And I was always a girl who was afraid to stay alone in the room. But in the lager I decided I will be not afraid from nothing, because that's the ultimate bad what we had there. It cannot be something worse. But as we find out later, it can.
The first day I walked in my wooden shoes, and it was hard walking. We slept in the fields. We slept in the morning when you get up, you're wet from the dew. The next morning I tied my shoes together, shoelaces, and carried them on my shoulder. It was easier walking barefoot, 30-some kilometers a day. And again, those who could not keep up with the march, we call them strugglers, or people who were weak. They were, at first, which may have appeared as an act of kindness, they were asked to go on the carts with provisions, for the guards and for the inmates. And when the cart was full, they were ordered down and machine gunned and left like that. And 67 or 69 people in the 3 days were shot and left to rot on the road.
When we woke up in the next morning, he said, I can't feel my feet. So I looked and I said, oh, what are we going to do? You froze your feet. And so a matter of fact, he had, and he almost couldn't walk, and I had to help him. So and we stayed further back and further back till finally the SS man says, Los, go quicker, And so I never answered, So I went went a little quicker, and he fell. And he fell, he shot him. And he shot him, and he wanted to shoot me too, but I went zigzag, and I run forward, and I ran back into the rows, and I put on the blanket over my head, and I went over on the other side, and he came and he looked, you see, he didn't see me. So.
It was Christmas night, and I heard that the commandant asked if somebody is to give some musical performance, and nobody had a musical instrument there between the Germans. And then one of the Germans told, we should call up the Jewish girl, she can sing. And I went out and I was very scared, but I went up and I was dressed in this summer dress and with a little jacket and no stockings, but some very torn shoes. But I walked in the snow with it, and I went on the stage and I looked at the commandant and they looked at me and I thought, my God, how can I sing in these conditions? And I was singing. And I was singing. You can do everything when you know its life is on stake. And I was singing, Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht. That was the song. And he liked it. And he called me and he asked me a few questions. And he told the Lagerarbeiter that they should take me into the warehouse and they should dress up in winter clothes.
You know, there was 3 large mass graves, and each grave was kept open until it was filled, about 400 or 500 people. Within the period of 8 months, 1,537 people died in our camp.
From a town of 5,500 people, we gathered by one table. That's all was left of us. By one table, we gathered like one family, hugging one another, and that's all was left.
One message I always tell them: forget about the color of the people, forget the religion, take him as a human being, and everybody deserves to live.
Because what we saw and what we lived through, we could be very hateful, and but it's not good to hate. It destroys you, and in order to be able to function and to have a family, you had to forget the hate and concentrate on more understanding and love.
I remember that I was trapped in a world which was reduced, or was to bare nakedness, from morals, from scruples, from decency, from values. And I'm grateful, and I'm mindful of the fact I'm fortunate. I'm thankful that I was fortunate enough to have lived in a country like Canada with all its freedoms and its options.
I think like that should have never happened, but it did happen. And it can happen if we are not careful.
Well, I hate to sound so gloomy, but I really feel that it can happen again. In the right place, with favorable conditions like I had then, can happen again. Because I think that anti-Semitism will never be erased fully. It's hidden, it's camouflaged. So ugly heads can always rise, and I really think that it can happen. I hope never, never, but we don't know.
And I hope that people learn something from it to create a better world, a world where free of racism, free of hatred, free of inhumanities, of indecencies.